Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. This is Sham Kagodia. Please do let me know if I'm audible. Give me a thumbs up to prove that I'm audible to you, to show that I'm audible to you. Otherwise, I'll have to refresh the page. I'm audible? Can we start? Done. Okay. So before the lunch break, what we have seen, we basically saw the concept of 5-year plans, right? Why the idea of a 5-year plan was actually required. What do you mean by economic planning? What was the situation of Indian economy at the time of independence, right? And how do you remember the 5-year plans? That is basically the 12 5-year plans will be divided into three groups. In the first group, 3 5-year plans, second group, four, and in the third group, five 5-year plans. Okay. Now, regarding all these 5-year plans, certain important points. Before I start, in the next 1 hour, you'll come across multiple points. Multiple points. Have patience. All these points are important. Trust me when I say that in all these particular 5 plans, more than 100 points are there. But for UPSC exam, you don't have to remember all these, right? All these plans individually, in detail, not at all required. What are the important points? We'll go one by one. Now, first 5-year plan. The first 5-year plan, the focus of the first 5-year plan was basically agriculture sector. Please remember this. In the first 5-year plan, the focus of the first 5-year plan was agriculture sector. Why? Reason is very simple. We had gone through partition. Lot of agriculture land that earlier was present in India now had gone to, right, basically Pakistan. Lot of raw materials that we would get, right, or let's say a lot of food grains that we would get production done in the Pakistan region now was basically taken away by Pakistan government. As a result of this, in the first 5-year plan, because the population was very high, there is a scarcity of food grain, there is a lot of pressure on the prices of food grains in the market, etc. Government of India focused on the agriculture sector. Now, in order to promote development in the agriculture sector, in order to promote more and more productivity in the agriculture sector, government also implemented land reforms starting from the first 5-year plan itself. For example, abolition of zamindari system. Abolition of zamindari system actually was started in the first 5-year plan. So the argument of government of India was simple. Price levels for agriculture commodities is increasing. There is a pressure on food grain production. Lot of agriculture land has been lost to Pakistan, right? So we need to increase agriculture production. Hence, the focus of the first 5-year plan was agriculture. Now, imports of food grains were also very, very high. We used to import food grains from multiple countries, even including from USA. And that is the precise reason in 1960s we promoted the concept of green revolution. Now, as the result of the focus on agriculture sector, we also promoted irrigation projects. We also promoted irrigation projects. For example, Bhakra Nangal irrigation project or Damodaran irrigation project. Various irrigation projects were promoted in the first 5-year plan. As a result of all of these reforms, the overall production in the agriculture sector increased, right? Overall production increased and the supply to the domestic market also increased. But having said so, it doesn't mean that we were not importing food grains even after the first 5-year plan. Although the production increased, even then we continue to import food grains from rest of the world. So these are certain very important points regarding the first 5-year plan. In addition to these particular 5 points, I want to add one more point here. In the initial phase of planning, Government of India adopted a model called as Harrod-Domer model. Very, very famous. Please remember this. The model called as Harrod-Domer model, HD model. Now, what does the Harrod model state? Harrod-Domer model states that if a country wants to achieve a higher growth, if they want to achieve a higher growth, the savings in the economy has to increase and the capital output ratio has to decrease. What is that? I'll explain. Have patience, listen carefully. I'll repeat it again. Harrod-Domer model states that if a country wants to achieve a higher growth rate, then the savings in the economy has to increase and the capital output ratio has to decrease. That will automatically lead to higher GDP, higher growth. Now, question is, what is this concept of higher savings, higher growth? lower capital output ratio and higher growth. Let me ask you a very simple question. Imagine in a particular country, savings in the country increases. Please answer to my question. If the savings of the economy increases, can it lead to higher GDP? Simple question. Possible or not? I'll repeat it again. If in a country, the savings of the country increases, if the savings become higher, can it lead to higher growth in the economy or not? Please answer. It is after lunch break, I know, but please participate. Is it going to lead to higher GDP? Yes, right? The GDP growth rate would automatically become higher. Sir, how is that possible? Please revise the concept of a virtuous cycle, vicious cycle, right, etc., etc. You'll understand. So higher savings automatically will increase the GDP. That is, have a look at this. The formula that was given by the experts is growth, that is G, is equal to savings rate, yes, divided by the capital output ratio R. And the theory simply says, if you want the G to increase, S must increase and R must decrease. Now question is, sir, what is this capital output ratio? What is this capital output ratio? Now, imagine you are investing 100 rupee capital. Think of this. Imagine you are investing 100 rupee capital. Now, in example 1, by investing 100 rupee capital, for every 10 rupee capital, you'll be able to produce, for every 10 rupee capital, you'll be able to produce one good. I repeat, for every capital of 10 rupee, you'll be able to produce one good. And in example 2, for every 20 rupee capital, for every 20 rupee capital investment, you'll be able to produce one good. A simple question to you people. In which of the two examples do you think production would be higher? Do you think GDP would be higher? I'll repeat it again. You have a capital of 100 rupee. You want to invest in a capital of 100, but for every investment of 10 rupee in the capital, you'll be able to produce one good in one example. And for every investment of 20 rupee capital, you'll be able to produce one good in the example 2. Now, can I simply say you'll be able to produce more goods in the example 1 compared to the second example? Yes or no? Please do let me know now. At least now it should be very clear to you. You'll be able to produce more goods in the example 1 compared to example 2. That is, even if you invest 100 rupee in both of these economies, you'll get more production, more productivity in first example compared to second example. Now, this is basically called as capital output ratio. What do you mean by capital output ratio? To get 1 unit of output, I repeat, to get 1 unit of output, how much capital you are supposed to invest? I repeat, what is capital output ratio? To get 1 unit of output, how much capital you must invest? That is called as capital output ratio. Now have a look at this. If I shift from example 2 to example 1, can I say it is nothing but reduction in the capital output ratio? I'll repeat it. If I move from example 2 to example 1, can I say it is nothing but reduction in the capital output ratio? And many of you will ask me, sir, how is that possible? How can we reduce the capital output ratio? Just a simple example. What if I will invest money, get a better technology? I'll repeat it. I will invest money, get better technology. So is it possible that by investing same amount of capital, I'll be able to reduce the capital output ratio? Possible or not? Please think and do let me know. I will invest 100 rupee and purchase old machine. I will invest 100 rupee and purchase a new machine. So don't you think in second example, I'm investing in a new technology, investment is there, capital is there, but output would be higher in the second example. So I hope you understand, whenever there is a reduction in the capital output ratio, whenever you reduce the capital output ratio, this will have a direct impact on gross domestic product. Any problem with this? So is the logic okay? Savings, if you increase it, growth will increase. If capital output ratio decreases, growth will start increasing. This is nothing but Harrod-Domer model. Any problem here? This is nothing but the concept of Harrod-Domer model. So Harrod-Domer model says, if you want to increase a growth, increase the savings rate and reduce the capital output ratio. Now, on the other side, imagine if the capital output ratio increases. I'll give you another situation. Imagine you will increase the investment in the capital, and along with higher investment in the capital output ratio also increases. Do you think growth will increase in this situation? Think of it. If investment in the capital increases, the capital output ratio also increases. Do you think the GDP will increase? Arey Baba, think correctly. Please think correctly. If investment in the capital increases and capital output ratio also increases, will the GDP increase? No, GDP will not increase. There is no guarantee in the growth in the GDP. It might even fall down. That is the argument. Any problem here? Can we go forward? So in case of the Harrod-Domer model, which was actually adopted by Government of India in the first initial couple of 5-year plan, the argument was, if you want to increase GDP, you have to increase the savings rate and you will have to reduce the capital output ratio. But do you think that was possible in Indian economy at this point of time? Think of it. At this point of time, in 1950s, was it possible to increase savings rate? Right? What was the mainstay of Indian economy? Agriculture was the mainstay. And when agriculture is providing most of the employment opportunity, most of the working population is there in agriculture sector, where income is already low, right? The savings will also already be lower. Automatically, investment would also be lower. That was the issue here. Any problem here? That was the issue. You say you need to increase savings, but most of the contribution comes from agriculture sector, where farmers are not earning huge amount of income. If the income is already very low, how can you make your savings higher? So that was the criticism regarding the adoption of this model. Done. So this is basically called as Harrod-Domer model, which was adopted in the initial couple of 5-year plans. Now, second 5-year plan. Any problem here? First 5-year plan, I've given you 6 very important points. 6. I know not many, but 6 important points. Point number 1, agriculture sector was the focus in order to address the issue of food grain availability as well as price rises. Second, in order to promote agriculture sector, we promoted irrigation projects. Third, we also started implementing land reforms in the first 5-year plan. Fourth, right, we were import dependent. We wanted to address it. Fifth, as a result of this, agriculture sector production increased, but that doesn't mean our imports were right nil. We continue to import further. And sixth, very important point, in the initial phase of planning, Government of India followed a model called as Harrod-Domer strategy or Harrod-Domer model. As per Harrod-Domer model, if a country wants to increase the growth, you will have to reduce the capital output ratio and increase the savings rate. That was basically the 6 very important points in the first 5-year plan. Now, second 5-year plan. Have a look at this second 5-year plan. Government of India changed the policy. Suddenly, Government of India changed the policy. Now, before I go to the second 5-year plan, what have you learned in industrial policy in 1956? Connect the dots so that it becomes easier for you to remember. What happened in industrial policy in 1956? Can I say in industrial policy in 1956, most of the industries which were earlier open for private sector participation now were kept under the monopoly of Government of India. All of you okay? I'll repeat it again. In the first 5 years, in the industrial policy of 1948, lot of industries were kept open for private sector participation. Now, most of them were brought under the control of Government of India. That is exactly what happened in IP 1956. Now, add to that second 5-year plan, which is also referred to as Mahalanobis policy or Mahalanobis strategy, or else some of the books will also refer to this as Nehru Mahalanobis plan. Now, what happened in a Nehru-Malanobis plan? Very simple argument. We are producing basic goods. Now, you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by basic goods? I'll explain it. Listen to me very carefully. There are goods which are called as basic goods. There are goods which are called as consumer goods. Right? There are industries which are referred to as light industry and heavy industry. Light industry and heavy industry. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. Let me ask you a very simple question. A mobile phone. All of you have a mobile phone? Anybody in the classroom who says, sir, I don't have a mobile phone? So, all of you have a mobile phone. Can I say mobile phone is a kind of a good which is consumed by users or consumers? Think of it. A mobile phone, right, or a laptop, it's nothing but it's a type of a consumer good. A TV, a refrigerator, it is nothing but a consumer good. Consumer good means the one which is consumed by users, end users in the market. Now, that is the basic concept of consumer goods. What about basic goods? Basic goods are those industries where the production is done which is supplied to other industries. I'll repeat it. What are basic goods? Those are the goods which are produced in one industry, but they're supplied to other industries for further, right, for other production. For example, imagine a company will purchase a cotton and convert this into cotton or wool. Now, don't you think this cotton will be purchased by another company to produce shirts, to produce any kind of textiles? All of you okay with this? Yes or no? It will be consumed by another industry for production of another good like this. These are called as basic goods or basic industries. Production in one industry supplied to another for other production. Come to light industry and heavy industry. I'll start with an example. Shipbuilding. Shipbuilding, right? Or for that matter, aircraft manufacturing. Now, simple question. Talk about shipbuilding and aircraft industries. How much investment is required? Do you think the amount of investment will be very less? What about the production? Production done will be very huge also. Output will also be very huge. Employment requirement will also be very huge. These are called as heavy industries. Any problem? These are called as heavy industries. On the other side, let's say tape recorders. Simple example. Tape recorders. Manufacturing of tape recorders. Tell me, between shipbuilding, aircraft manufacturing, and manufacturing of tape recorders, do you think investment requirement in tape recorders will be very, very high? No, investment requirement will be very, very less. What about the value of output? Value of output will also be comparatively lesser. These are called as light industries. These are called as light industries. So this is a basic idea. Do not complicate it. Keep it very simple. I'll repeat it again. Basic means production is used by other industries. And that is the reason why this is called. This is called as a basic industry. For example, paper, right? Or for that matter, let's say, what is that? Sugar industry, textile industries, that is cotton industries, all these are called as basic industries. On the other side, consumer goods, consumer industry, any good that is consumed by the end user, that is called as consumer goods. Third one is a light industry and heavy industry. In heavy industry, investment requirement is very large, right? Output is also very large. Compared to that, in light industry, investment requirement is lesser, output is also lesser. Now, why I'm discussing all of this, you will come across all of these here and there. Do not be confused. Now, come to the second 5-year plan. Second 5-year plan is also referred to as a Mahalanobis strategy, or else it is also referred to as heavy industrialization policy. It is also referred to as heavy industrialization policy. What was done in the second 5-year plan? In the first 5-year plan, focus was agriculture sector. In the second 5-year plan, we focused on industrialization. And it's not very difficult to remember. If you remember industrial policy in 1956, automatically connect the dot, you will understand it. Why? In IP 1956, Government of India took over the control of many of the industries. So argument was to promote industrialization. So now Government of India said, rather than importing consumer goods, rather than importing basic goods, rather than importing heavy industries, what we would do is we will promote the production of consumer goods in the domestic market. We'll promote the production of basic goods in the domestic market. We'll promote the production of capital goods in the domestic market. In a nutshell, industrialization. Very simple. In a nutshell, industrialization was the focus of the second 5-year plan. And that is the reason this is also referred to as a Mahalanobis strategy or a industrialization plan as well. So what was the concept here? Promote production of heavy goods, promote a production of capital goods, promote the production of the consumer goods, promote the production of basic goods. Right? Can I also simply say this promoted import substitution? Think of it and please do answer to my question. Can I also say if the target was industrialization, production of basic goods, production of capital goods, production of consumer goods, can we say that it is nothing but a policy to promote import substitution? All of you okay? It's a policy. It's a 5-year plan which promoted a concept of import substitution. So second 5-year plan focused on heavy industries, consumer goods, as well as basic goods, increase the national income and rate of investment. At this particular point, that is the second 5-year plan, 3 steel plants were constructed in India. One at Rourkela, second one at Bhilai, third one at Durgapur. Was the second 5-year plan very successful? Was it successful? If you look at the growth rate, the first 5-year plan, the target growth rate was 2.1%. We were able to achieve 3.6%, much more than what was actually targeted. But look at the second 5-year plan. The target growth rate was 4.5%. We were not even able to reach the target. We were undercut. We were basically, right, we were able to achieve 4.3%, which was much lower than what was the target setup. Now, question is why? Why were we not able to achieve all the objectives that were set up in the second 5-year plan? The arguments were very simple. Did we have lot of savings at this particular point of time? Please think of it. Did we have lot of savings in 1950s? Answer is no. So you want to promote industrialization, you need to have savings for that because the investment has to go. Investment has to happen in the industries. So industrialization, right, or the savings were very low. We were not able to promote more and more investments. Second one, we wanted to reduce import dependence. We wanted to promote consumer goods. We wanted to promote manufacturing of basic goods. Now, please think of it. If you basically want to produce, let's say, a tape recorder, you want to produce, right, a car, you want to produce, right, let's say, a TV, don't you think you'll require capital machinery for it? Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. You want to promote production of basic goods and consumer goods. But for manufacturing of basic goods as well as consumer goods, will you require capital machinery or not? Will you require capital goods or not? Did we have industries which will provide capital goods in India? At this point of time, did we have more industries which would produce capital machinery to supply to the domestic market? No. So in order to promote industrialization, in order to reduce import dependence, our target was produce capital goods, produce heavy industries, promote heavy industries, produce consumer goods, produce basic goods. But for all of this, you required machinery. So as a result of this, what happened was were made more import dependent. All of you okay with this? We were made more import dependent now. We wanted to reduce imports. We ended up having more and more imports because of this policy. Right? That is the reason it is said that second five-year plan was not very successful. We did not have strategy to promote employment. Agriculture sector was put in the back burner. It was not the focus. Industrialization was the focus. Despite India facing food crisis at this point of time, investments were not very high because savings were very low in India, etc. That is the precise reason it is said that second five-year plan was not very successful in case of India. Any problem here? Can we go forward? Can we go forward? Any issues? Please do let me know. Because if you don't have any issues, I'll go to the third five-year plan. Increase in investment doesn't mean increase in capital output ratio, not necessarily. Not necessarily. If investment increases, does it always mean your capital output ratio will increase? No. Let me prove it. Imagine I'm a worker, I'm a skilled worker in your company. You will invest money and bring the latest technology to manufacture this good. Now, please tell me, if you bring the latest technology to manufacture this good and I'm skilled worker, will the capital output ratio decrease or not? Is the logic okay? Will the capital output ratio start decreasing because I'm a skilled, you have a better technology, I'll be able to increase more and more productivity. It will increase the productivity in the economy. Okay, done. Third five-year plan, 61 to 66. Third five-year plan, 61 to 66. Now, Government of India realized that agriculture sector should not be ignored. Again, they reintroduced agriculture as the focus here. Emphasis was on the agriculture sector. In fact, at this particular point of time, there was the concept of a green revolution. In the third and fourth five-year plan, we promoted green revolution, which was targeting production of wheat. Correct? Wheat, right? Production, more and more production through higher productivity of wheat. So the idea was basically to promote agriculture sector as the focus in the third five-year plan. And the reason was very simple. We were importing a lot of food grain. We wanted to reduce import dependence. We wanted to bring down the import dependence by producing more and more food grains in the domestic market. But at this particular point of time, again, the third five-year plan was basically a failure. Please look at the growth rate, you'll understand. The third five-year plan was basically a failure, right? The target was 5.6%. We were able to achieve a half of that, 2.8%. Reason is very simple. Reason is very simple. In 1961 to 66, two things happened. One, we fought two wars. We fought two wars, one with China, one with Pakistan. And whenever wars are fought, please remember this, whenever wars are fought, the governments will not be focused on industrialization. Government will not be focused on right agriculture sector. No, every resource will get diverted for fighting war. Right, so there was a constraint on the resources availability for promotion of growth and development. Point number one. Point number two, there were multiple years where India faced a drought situation. I repeat, in multiple years, we faced a drought-like situation. Right, so the drought as well as wars that India fought basically led to right an huge impact on the growth prospect in this particular third five-year plan. The forex reserves that were there, we started to deplete these forex reserves, and that is the precise reason third five-year plan was actually cut short, and hence third five-year plan was a huge failure for Indian economy. But apart from that, agriculture sector was the focus. Focus was to increase the production so that our import dependence will come down. Apart from this, basic goods or basic industries were also focused in the third five-year plan. Done? Any problem with these three particular points? Please do let me know. Sir, any other points regarding the third five-year plan? Hundreds of points are there. You don't worry about it. Simple points. One, agriculture sector was the focus. Basic industries were also promoted, right? Because of war and a drought, the plan was a failure. That's it. And that is the reason after the third 5-year plan, we took a plan holiday. We did not immediately implement the fourth 5-year plan. We had annual plans after the third 5-year plan. Done. So this is the importance of third 5-year plan. Let me go to the fourth FYP now. Fourth 5-year plan. Very important. Why? Fourth 5-year plan. Until now, our target was growth. Simple. Right? Until now, the target was growth. Now, Government of India realized, despite me targeting growth, right, we expected trickle down to work. This is not working in India. The inequality, regional disparity which is present, it's still there. In fact, it is increasing. So what did Government of India do? Starting from the fourth 5-year plan, they started to change their policy. Very simple. They started to change the policy. How? Think of it at this particular point of time, even today for that matter. Where does majority of the population reside in India? It is rural. Where does a lot of working population, around half of the working population present? Where is that present? In the agriculture sector. So Government of India decided, why don't we start implementing policies for the benefit of the poor? I hope you understand the argument here. Right? Until now, we believed in the trickle down. Provide benefit to the rich class, promote industries, benefit will flow down to other parts of the society. Now, Government of India said, no, I will not be dependent on trickle down. What I will do is, I will change my strategy in such a way that I will start targeting poorer sections. I will formulate policies to provide benefit to poor sections in the society. For example, green revolution. Let me know who will get the benefit of green revolution. Is it rich people or the farmers? Banking nationalization. Who will get the benefit of banking nationalization? Don't you think the poor farmers, the people residing in villages, etc., will get the benefit of banking nationalization? If you ask me how, please go back to banking chapter, you will understand it. So argument of Government of India was, yes, right, we will promote growth, but now we will also start implementing policies. Rather than being dependent on trickle down, we'll start implementing policies to target this income inequality in the economy. We will start implementing such policies. And that is the reason, please remember, nationalization of banking sector was implemented here. All of you okay with this? Right, the first round of nationalization was done in 1969, although appealed. Right, Supreme Court struck it down again 1970. So first round of banking nationalization. Green revolution was promoted. In fact, please remember this. Before the green revolution, it is said that for 1 hectare of land, hardly around 1 ton of wheat production used to happen in India. Farmers used to produce hardly around 1 ton of wheat. With green revolution, the productivity increased to more than 3 times. I hope you understand. Because of green revolution, high productivity, increased productivity, right? The productivity increased to more than 3 times in case of wheat in India. That is the precise reason we were able to become a country with surplus production from a country where there was a deficit of production. Today, for example, can we say that at the time of independence, there was a deficit in the food grain production? Today, we have a surplus in the food grain production. All of you okay with this? At the time of independence, we faced a deficit of food grain production, and today we have a surplus food grain production to the extent that we are a major exporter of food grain to the most of the international market. For example, let me connect it to current affairs. Have you been reading in the newspaper, as a result of ban of export of wheat, export of rice that has been imposed by the government, what is happening to food security across the globe? Yes or no? Have you been reading about these articles in the newspaper? Many countries want to enter into agreement with India in order to import food grains for those countries. So gone are the days when we were dependent on the import of agriculture products. Today we are net exporter of agriculture products. So we have moved away from a deficit situation to a surplus situation. That is one of the success stories of the 5-year plans in India. But anyways, so nationalization of banking sector and a promotion of green revolution. Can I also say banking sector is nothing but it is reforms in the financial sector? This was asked by UPSC. Let me know. Banking sector reform is nothing but reforms in the financial sector. So can I say a 4th 5-year plan is the plan where the strategy of government of India started changing, right? The strategy started changing. In fact, even before also they had started making changes. But more importantly, the government also started implementing, right? Basically the argument of the financial sector reforms, right? So this is very important. Please remember this. It aimed at increasing the living standard through welfare programs. Plan recommended, please remember this, plan recommended regional and local level planning. 4th 5-year plan is the first plan to focus and recommend on regional level planning. And the argument was very simple. Lot of regional disparities were present even after 3 5-year plans were implemented. Some of the regions continue to grow at a very good pace, experience good growth. But on the other side, there were also other regions which lagged behind, which were not experiencing good development as well as growth rates. So regional level planning was actually recommended in the 4th 5-year plan. Apart from these points, please remember one more very important point. 4th plan was the first plan in case of India to promote family planning. And there is a particular reason why I'm talking about family planning in the 4th 5-year plan. Very recently, have you come across these newspaper articles which says India is the most populous country in the world? Let me know. India is the most populous country in the world now. We have overtaken China. Suddenly, UPSC can ask you this question. Which of the following 5-year plans targeted family planning programs? That can be asked by UPSC. Please be very, very careful. So it was the 4th 5-year plan which for the first time introduced the concept of family planning at the national level, right? So 69 to 74. These are the important points. I'll repeat it again. Point number 1, you will see financial sector reforms. You will also see certain other reforms, right? So that government of India would start targeting welfare of the poor people. Government promoted growth in this 5-year plan. Government also promoted regional local level planning, and government also introduced the concept of family planning in the 4th 5-year plan. These are the important points. Please remember this. 5th 5-year plan. What is the importance of 5th 5-year plan? Government introduced a punchline of Garibi Hatao. That is, in simple terms, government wanted to eradicate poverty in the 5th 5-year plan. Garibi Hatao, eradication of poverty. The focus of the 5th 5-year plan was a poverty elevation as well as self-reliance, Atmanirbharata as well as elevation of poverty. And in order to alleviate poverty, in order to address the issue of poverty, government introduced the concept of 20-point program. Please remember this. Government introduced the concept of 20-point program. 20-point program basically, as the name suggests, is a program of government of India where 20 points were actually covered. Sir, what are the 20 points? For example, education, housing, clean drinking water, slum development, etc. etc. So there were 20 points like this, which were collectively referred to as 20-point program, which was implemented during the 5th 5-year plan. Now, apart from this, in the 5th 5-year plan, the focus was also to promote employment opportunities, to create employment opportunities. For example, in the 5th 5-year plan, Government of India launched an initiative by the name of IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program. Integrated Rural Development Program. Now, you don't have to read the details of IRDP, not at all needed. Simply remember, IRDP was actually launched in the fifth five-year plan. That should be more than sufficient. Now, some of you later, when you read book A, book B, source A, B, C, etc., some of the sources will say IRDP was implemented in the sixth five-year plan. Nothing wrong with that. Why? Initially, in the fifth five-year plan, it was implemented as a pilot project. Very few of the districts were covered initially, but in the sixth five-year plan, somewhere around 1980, the coverage of the IRDP was extended to the whole of India. That is the reason some authors will say at all India level, IRDP was implemented in the sixth FIP. Some authors will simply say IRDP as a program was launched in the fifth five-year plan. Okay, so 20-point program, right? Garibi Hatao was the focus, poverty alleviation was the focus, self-reliance was the focus. The schemes to promote employment opportunities such as IRDP was launched in the fifth five-year plan, right? Apart from this, fourth very important point regarding the fifth five-year plan, it was supposed to be implemented from 74 to 79. There were elections conducted. There was a change in the government. And right after a couple of years of implementation, the fifth five-year plan was discontinued. It was discontinued because of change in the government. Mr. Morarji Desai, Janata Party, formed the government. Mr. Morarji Desai became the prime minister. Because the government changed, the new government had a different ideology altogether. The new government said, we will not continue to implement a five-year plan of earlier government. They discontinued, and in place of fifth five-year plan, the sixth plan was implemented, which was called as a rolling plan. But even this particular sixth plan, that is rolling plan, was not completely implemented. Again, there was a change in the government. Indira Gandhi became the prime minister again. That is, Mrs. Indira Gandhi became the prime minister. And the old sixth five-year plan was dismantled. A new sixth five-year plan was actually implemented. Done? Now, what are the important points regarding the sixth five-year plan? What are the important points? Point number one. In the sixth five-year plan, which was implemented from 80 to 85, 80 to 85, gender issues, gender issues were discussed. Please remember this. Gender issues was the focus, and women empowerment. Women empowerment through employment was also one of the very important point. Is the logic okay? Point number one. In the sixth five-year plan, gender issues, for the first time, gender issues were discussed. Women employment was discussed. Point number two. For the first time, right, for the funds were allocated. Funds were allocated. Funds were allocated to address the issue of regional disparities. Point number two. Funds were allocated to address the issue of regional disparities. Point number three. The focus of the sixth five-year plan was also to promote infrastructure development. Right? The focus was to promote infrastructure development. And fourth point, as usual, the sixth five-year plan focused on social welfare measures, focused on poverty alleviation. And in order to reduce disparities, in order to promote employment generation, in order to address the issue of poverty alleviation, etc., many schemes were implemented. For example, NREP, National Rural Employment Program. Second, MNP, Minimum Needs Program, was also implemented. These are the five very important points regarding the sixth five-year plan. Can we go forward now? Anybody has an issue? And please trust me, many of you will say, sir, discuss what is MNP. Many of you will say, please discuss what is NREP. Not at all needed. We can have a discussion, but not at all needed for UPSC exam. Because if I start discussing all these schemes individually, hundreds of schemes have been implemented in the 12 five-year plans. That will never get over. Even if I complete 1 year, all the schemes will not be over. You don't waste your time. Simply remember, these are the points. Right? For example, what is the difference in a fourth and sixth five-year plan? In the fourth five-year plan, regional planning was discussed. In the fourth five-year plan, how do you address these regional issues was discussed. in the sixth five-year plan, funds were actually allocated in order to ensure that the regions which are lagging behind in terms of growth, there would be promotion of certain industrialization, promotion of certain economic activity will happen in only those regions. That was the argument of sixth five-year plan. Funds for the first time were allocated to address issue of regional disparities. And so these are certain important points regarding sixth FYP. Seventh FYP, very, very important. Why? Point number one. Seventh FYP, if you remember the table, I'll come back to this slide. Right, have a look at this. If you remember this particular table, what is the importance of seventh FYP? Can I say for the first time, India was able to achieve 6% GDP growth rate in a 5-year plan? Let me know. That number is important. 6% number is important. Why? We were not able to breach or hit that particular 6% GDP growth rate. But for the first time in the in the seventh 5-year plan, we were able to exceed the target. Target was 5%. We were able to exceed the target of 5%, in fact, achieve 6%. That 6% barrier is important for us. So point number one, seventh FIP, 6%, right, growth rate we were able to achieve for the first time. Point number two, within the seventh 5-year plan, and what is the duration of seventh 5-year plan? 1985 to 1990. In the financial year 89, please remember this number. In the financial year 89, agriculture sector for the first time registered a double-digit growth rate. I repeat, agriculture sector registered a highest ever double-digit growth rate of how much? 10.4%. Right, to be precise, it's somewhere around 10.37%. I'm rounding off. 10.4%. That was the highest ever agriculture growth rate in a year, double digit. Very, very high growth rate we were able to achieve in the financial year 89. Any problem with this? So point number one, in the seventh 5-year plan, we were able to achieve 6% GDP growth rate. Point number one. Point number two, in the financial year 89, agriculture sector contribution or agriculture sector grew at a double digit growth rate, that is at 10.4%. Point number three, private sector investment. Please remember this very carefully. Private sector investment in the economy started increasing, and it will start increasing now. Private sector investment in the economy started increasing. And why this point is important? If you look at the industrial policies, starting from industrial policy 1948, then industrial policy 1956, most of the industries were brought under the complete control of Government of India, which means most of the investment that took place in the economy was through government owned enterprises, that is through public sector. But from the seventh 5-year plan, especially from the seventh and eighth, ninth, etc., like this, private sector investment started to increase in the Indian economy. That is a third very important point. Apart from this, infrastructure sector, infrastructure growth, infrastructure sector was the focus in the seventh 5-year plan. And right, have a look at the next point as well. Import substitution policy. We started dismantling, removing the concept of import substitution policy. What is the import substitution policy? Rather than importing this product from, let's say, USA or from China, we will manufacture the product in the domestic market. And this product, when it is manufactured in the domestic market, we don't have to import it. That was basically import substitution policy. Now government said, rather than only looking at import substitution, because please think of it, import substitution is a type of a protectionist policy. Rather than this, why don't we produce more and more of this bottle so that we can export the bottle to international market? That will be nothing but outward oriented policy. That is, from the seventh 5-year plan, we started promoting more and more exports from India to rest of the world. Is the logic okay with all of you? Rather than having import substitution, now we started promoting more and more exports so that we will not simply produce, to reduce import, will produce to export to the international market. That will bring more and more forex reserves to us. It will increase our contribution to the international market in terms of exports, etc. That kind of a change in the strategy took place in the seventh five-year plan. These are the five very important points. Apart from this, as usual, growth was the focus, poverty alleviation was the focus, right? The production of food grain was the focus, and these are all generic arguments. But what are the special arguments? Special points regarding the seventh five-year plan, right? The growth rate achieved 6%, agriculture sector 10.4%, infrastructure sector was the focus. Rather than import substitution, we started promoting more and more export. We became outward oriented policy. Private sector investment started to increase in the economy, right? Various schemes such as Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, JRY, Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, etc., were also implemented. Food processing was also promoted starting in the seventh five-year plan. Done. So these are certain important points regarding the seventh five-year plan. Any difficulty? Any difficulty? Right? Some of you might be already feeling the heat in the sense. So many points under every five-year plan. How do you remember it? My trick is simple. Do not by heart generic points. Don't by heart generic points. For example, don't you think in most of the five-year plans, industrialization will be covered? In most of the five-year plans, right, promotion of import substitution is covered. Poverty alleviation is covered. You'll see these kind of generic terms in most of the five-year plans. But what is the speciality about a particular plan? Please try to remember it. For example, let me see how many of you have read regarding certain schemes. These are the five-year plans. Correct? These are the five-year plans. Now, please have a look at it and tell me in which of the five-year plans Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme was implemented by the government. Let me see. That I know I have not given you any point regarding Manrega, but at least you must have read here, there, social issue, etc. In which of the five-year plans do you think Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme was actually launched by Government of India? Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme or Act was launched here, 10th five-year plan. It was launched in the 10th five-year plan. What is the year? In which year? Manrega. I'm talking about Manrega. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Manrega, right? It was launched in 2005. It was launched in 2005. That would make it 10th five-year plan. Let me ask you one more question. In which five-year plan right to education was launched? Let me see. In which five-year plan right to education was launched? It was launched in the 11th five-year plan, 2010. It was launched in the 11th five-year plan. So this is how you remember. This is how you remember. And trust me, UPSC is not going to ask you about all these schemes, which are important ones, which are the most important ones. That is where UPSC will focus. Right? So I hope you understand. Don't try to by heart everything. My trick is simple. Most important ones. Remember the year. Remember the five-year plan. Okay. So seventh five-year plan is done. Eighth five-year plan, 92 to 97. After annual plans, plan holiday, eighth five-year plan, 92 to 97 was implemented. What is the speciality about the eighth five-year plan? Point number one. LPG reforms were implemented in the eighth five-year plan. Lot of LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization reforms were implemented in the eighth five-year plan. That is point number one. Point number two. Private sector investment in the economy crossed more than 50% in the eighth five-year plan. What is the reason? You have the point right in front of you. Is it okay? Point number one, LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization was actually implemented. Second, Because of LPG reforms, the private sector investment crossed more than 50%, and after that it has remained more than 50% only, crossed more than 50% in the economy. Third, eighth five-year plan was also the first five-year plan to talk about universal elementary education. Universal elementary education. It was the first five-year plan to talk. In the 1991, India faced BOP crisis. But after implementation of various reforms of government of India, various reforms by government of India, we were able to promote higher growth rate in terms of exports. We were able to have a higher import because of the reforms implemented by the government. As a result of this, please understand the trade deficit that India faced. The trade deficit actually went down. The current account deficit that India faced during 1991, even that crisis also went down. In fact, if you remember, in 1991, earlier I said the forex reserves that were available to India, the forex reserves that were available to India were sufficient to import only 14 days of oil. Right, only for a fortnight we were able to import crude oil using the forex reserves. We were staring BOP crisis. But you will be happy to know that after that we have implemented so many reforms, as a result of which the forex reserves with India have continuously kept on increasing. From a BOP crisis by 2003 2004, our forex reserves ballooned to more than $100 billion. Then by 2008 and 9, it ballooned more than $200 billion. Now it is more than 500, $600 billion. So forex reserves in case of Indian economy have continuously increased, providing certain comfort to the whole situation in the Indian economy. So improvement in trade as well as current account deficit. The fiscal deficit of government was also controlled during the eighth five-year plan. These are the 4 to 5 very important points regarding eighth five-year plan. Any problem with this? In fact, if you have read today's Hindu newspaper, I don't know how many of you have read it. Today's Hindu newspaper, what is the headline? What is the headline? That the goods trade deficit has ballooned, correct? If you have read the newspaper, it will be very clear to you. Hindu newspaper, today's headline is goods trade deficit. Very recently, the latest data shows that it has actually ballooned. And for the first time in the last 1 year, we are also experiencing service trade deficit. That is also there. Today's Hindu newspaper, please read it. Okay. Now come back to the ninth five-year plan. Any problem so far? Come back to ninth five-year plan. 97 to 02. 97 to 02. Point number one, it was announced in the 50th year of independence. 1947, 1997. 50th year of independence. Point number one. Point number two, there was an introduction of a concept of basic minimum services. BMS, basic minimum services. What is the basic minimum services? 8 services were identified. Sorry, 7 services were identified, such as housing, education, drinking water, etc. And we called these as basic minimum services. And why these were classified as basic minimum services? Government said every household should get access to these basic minimum services. That is the reason. Look at the basic minimum services: drinking water, healthcare, education, housing assistance, nutritional support, etc. etc. So basic minimum services, 7 basic minimum services were identified in the ninth five-year plan. Third point, the private sector investment ballooned. And not just private sector investment, specifically within the private sector investment, we started attracting a lot of foreign direct investment, FDI. Foreign direct investment ballooned to the domestic market, right? In fact, please understand, 2000 to 2004, right, it is considered to be one of the phases in Indian economy where the GDP growth rate was very, very high. Very, very high. Lot of investment came to the services sector, not only from the domestic market but also from the international market. So domestic market investment as well as foreign investment in the form of FDI ballooned in the Indian market. Apart from this, right, there was a discussion regarding consolidation of fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, etc. And after this only, that is 2003. In 2003, we implemented FRBM. So the discussion was conducted in the ninth five-year plan, but FRBM Act came into force in the 10th five-year plan. Right, so these are certain very, very important points regarding ninth FYP. 10th FIP, FRBM Act was implemented, Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act. Second point, Manrega scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act was implemented. Apart from this, we targeted reduction in the poverty rate by 5%. We were not able to meet that. That's a different issue. We wanted to target gainful and high quality employment, especially in rural part of India. That's a reason Manrega scheme was implemented. We wanted to ensure all the children will be in the school by 2003. That was not right. That was not possible. That's a reason right to education later was implemented in the year 2010. Right. So providing potable drinking water to all the houses. These were certain very important objectives or the areas that were covered in the 10th five-year plan. Last two five-year plans. Last two. 11th five-year plan. What is the importance of 11th five-year plan? In the 11th five-year plan, central theme was inclusive growth. Very important. Please remember this. In the 11th five-year plan, the central theme was inclusive growth. Now, question is, what do you mean by inclusive growth? In fact, in the 11th and 12th, both the five-year plans, central theme was inclusive growth. Now, what is the inclusive growth? What do you mean by inclusive growth? I'll come back to this slide. Please don't worry. I'll come back to this slide. Let me give you the basic idea of inclusive growth. Right? What is this concept of inclusive growth? Have a look at this. Inclusive growth refers to the pace and pattern of growth. Right? Remember this. Very, very important. Why? Generally, the trend is that in UPSC mains, I repeat, in UPSC mains, there is one question on inclusive growth. This is the pattern of UPSC. Prelims, you generally don't get questions. As per World Bank, inclusive growth refers to the pace as well as pattern of growth. Now, question is, what do you mean by pace and pattern of growth? Let me take a very simple example. India will become economy worth $5 trillion. Is this sufficient for you? Think of it. India will become an economy whose GDP is worth $5 trillion. Is the GDP number, only that GDP number, is it sufficient to determine that all the Indians are better off? Is it just sufficient to determine that all the Indians have got food grains? Is it sufficient to determine what is the situation of agriculture sector? Please think of it. What do you prefer? India simply becoming $5 trillion or India becoming $5 trillion plus poverty numbers will come down. The number of people who are classified as poor will come down. Plus number of, right, let's say, number of jobs generated will increase. Number of farmer suicides will come down. Everybody in India is able to get access to nutritious food, etc. So don't you think, rather than focusing only on the quantitative data, I'll repeat it, rather than focusing only on the quantitative data, that is GDP, it is equally important to focus what is the benefit of this number to the whole society. All of you okay with this? Is it just sufficient to become a $5 trillion economy, or it is also equally important to ensure that with higher GDP, more jobs will be generated? With higher GDP, right, farmer suicides will come down. With higher GDP, farmer incomes will increase. With higher GDP, right, pollution will be controlled, etc., etc. That is the reason inclusive growth simply means the pace of the growth as well as the pattern of the growth. You're not just focused on the pace. You will become 8% growth rate economy, 9%. You will achieve 10%. You will achieve, let's say, 6% GDP growth rate. But what is the importance of it? For a common man, what is important? Are they getting jobs? Is government providing sufficient nutritious food for all the population who cannot afford it? Is government ensuring education is available at affordable prices to poor sections of the society? Is government ensuring farmers are getting sufficient amount of revenues or not? That is more important. That is the reason World Bank says inclusive growth refers to the pace of growth as well as pattern of the growth. And don't you think both, that is the pace as well as pattern, in simple terms, economic growth as well as development, don't you think both are connected to each other? Please think of it and answer. Right? Don't you think economic growth and development both are connected to each other? If a country achieves a higher economic growth, one of the natural outcomes we expect is development should happen. So both are connected to each other, both must be promoted together. That is the argument. Do not promote only growth. Is the logic okay with all of you? Do not promote only growth. If you promote only growth, what if rich will become very rich and poor will become very poor? And don't you think GDP data will not talk about this kind of income inequality that is existing in the economy? GDP simply talks about what is the total income. GDP doesn't tell you how much is earned by whom. That is the reason both are connected to each other. Promote both of them together. Do not assume both are different. Both are connected. Government has to promote both of them together. All of you okay with this? Any issue with the definition? Please do let me know. This is basically the definition that has been given by World Bank. This is called as inclusive growth. Can we go forward now? Any problem with the definition? And if you ask me, sir, is government of India doing this? You tell me. Is government of India doing both? Right? That is a promotion of growth as well as development. And don't you think government of India is doing both? Promotion of growth, promotion of development. How, sir? On one side, I'll write certain schemes. Let me know. Make in India initiative. Make in India. Okay. Production linked incentives. What do you think is the focus of these initiatives? Is it development or is it growth? Right? Don't you think these initiatives mainly target growth? All of you okay? These initiatives mainly target growth. Growth is the main agenda for these initiatives. On the other side, what about National Food Security Act? National Food Security Act. What about Manrega? Manrega. What about, right, let's say Atal Pension Yojana, right? Pradhana Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, right? Their agenda is to provide development, right? I can keep on writing hundreds of schemes. I hope you understand. Hundreds of schemes. Midday meals scheme, right? Or for that matter, BharatNet initiative. All these, right, basically target development. That is welfare of the people, welfare of the society. So government of India, right, and this has started many decades ago in India, right? Governments have been promoting growth, both growth as well as development. And when you focus and promote both of them together, that is basically called as inclusive growth. So 11th 5-year plan, first very important point, inclusive growth. First very important. Second very important point. In the 11th 5-year plan, please remember this, the government of India stated that the northeastern states, any states, the northeastern states, okay, northeastern states have not experienced the benefits of growth that the rest of India has been experiencing. All of you must agree to me. There is no right debate here. The northeastern states, they are not able to get the benefits of the growth that rest of the India is enjoying. For example, if you look at a state such as Tamil Nadu, states such as Maharashtra, states such as Punjab, states such as UP, etc., industrialization is happening in all these states. Industries are promoted. But if you look at the northeastern states, they are not able to get the benefit of these kind of a growth that rest of India has been experiencing. That is the precise reason government says even the northeastern states now should be brought under, right? They should be brought under, they should be focused upon, and we should ensure that even there will be growth and development in the northeastern regions or northeastern states. And that is a precise reason government of India in fact has created a department for the promotion of northeastern region. Okay, right? So first one is inclusive growth, second one is promotion of growth and development in the northeastern regions, third one is this had a strategy to promote inclusive development for the domestic market. Education and skill development was also a target. For example, right to education was implemented in the 11th 5 year plan only. Gender inequality was also target. Clean drinking water facility by 2009 was also the target, but we have not been able to achieve that. Targets were also set up for various other sectors such as agriculture, overall GDP, industries, etc., etc. So these are certain important points regarding 11th 5 year plan. And finally, the last 5 year plan for you, the 12th 5 year plan. What is the importance of 12th 5 year plan? Please understand this. In the 12th 5 year plan, again the agenda or the focus was inclusive growth. What was the central theme? Faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. Faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. 11th 5 year plan towards a faster and more inclusive growth. 12th, faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. 12th 5 year plan, I will not be able to evaluate it, what we achieved, etc., etc. Not possible. Why? We were supposed to implement this 12th 5 year plan from 2012 to 2017, but in 2015 government of India abolished planning commission, and because there was no planning commission, we were not able to implement the 12th 5 year plan, right? Till 2017 midway itself we stopped the implementation of 12th 5 year plan. But anyways, what was the focus of 12th 5 year plan? We wanted to achieve a GDP growth rate. We wanted to achieve a GDP growth rate of 8%. We wanted to ensure agriculture sector will grow by 4%. We wanted to ensure that manufacturing sector will grow by 10%, etc., etc. These were the targets which were set up. We have not been able to achieve for a very simple reason. We have not implemented the 12th 5 year plan completely, right? So basically these are the points regarding the 12th 5 year plan. Any doubts, any problem, please do let me know before I start discussing the evaluation, Niti Ayog, etc. If anybody has any kind of a doubt regarding what I've discussed in the last 1.5 hour, please do let me know. I've taken around 70 minutes to explain the 12 5 year plans. All the points are important. Please make a note of all these particular points. My recommendation is try to remember 3 to 4 points in every 5 year plan. Specific important points in the 5 year plans, please remember it. Okay. Universal education in the 8th 5 year plan, yes. Universal elementary education. Universal elementary education was the focus in the 8th 5 year plan. Okay. What is the definition of inclusive growth? The definition is nothing but inclusive growth refers to the pace as well as the pattern of growth. Both are connected to each other. Both must be addressed together. Both must be achieved together, not individually. Okay. Done? Any other doubts? Any other doubts? Otherwise, I'll go forward. Okay, done. So what is the evaluation? What is the evaluation of the 12 5 year plans? That is from 1951, let's say 2017, although right 2015 itself we have discontinued, let's say 2017. So 1951 to 2017, more than 70 years, and around 70 years. So around, or let's say around 60 plus years of planning in India. So what has been the experience, right? Where we were able to achieve something, where we lagged behind, where there was a failure in the planning, right? Let's do the critical evaluation. Point number one, achievement. Agriculture sector, we were able to shift from deficit to surplus. That everybody has to agree. There is no doubt in that. Achievement. Second, by nationalization in the banking sector, we were able to ensure access to banking services in a larger part of India. We were able to promote, push the banking services, financial service access to rural part of India as well. Third one, we were able to promote industrialization. Right? We were able to promote industrialization, no doubt, because of the planning. Fourth point, right, we were able to reduce number of right percentage of poor people in India. There's a term called as BPL population here. BPL stands for below poverty line. Below poverty line. In simple terms, how much of the total population, what percentage of total population in India is poor, right? That is BPL population. So BPL population, have a look at this data. In 1990s, BPL population in 1990s was somewhere around 45%. Some books have given 44, some books have given 46 also. So BPL population in 1990 was somewhere around 45 to 46%. And as per the latest data, 2011 census data, the BPL population in case of India has reduced to 21.9% as per Tendulkar committee. So I hope you understand we were able to reduce the percentage BPL population as well. So these are certain achievements, certain types of achievements that we have experienced because of the planning. But having said so, there are certain areas also where there have been a lot of failures. For example, one, in planning commission, right? We have discussed this, right? Don't ask me again. In planning commission, there was no representation of the states, which means a 5-year plan which has been prepared, there is no participation of the state representatives. That's a criticism. Second, a 5-year plan for whole of India was prepared. A 5-year plan for whole of India was prepared. But argument was from one region to another region, the requirement of programs will be different. Requirement of states would be different. That was not taken into consideration. One plan for whole of India. One size fits all approach. One plan for whole of India. From one region to another region, the requirements will be different. That was not considered here. That was the second criticism. Third one, land reforms were not implemented successfully across India. The reason is very simple. Land reforms were supposed to be implemented by the state government. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. The land reforms were supposed to be implemented by the state government. And because the state government, the party which formed the state government, the ideology of the state governments differed from one state to another state, there was no uniform implementation of land reforms. Uneven implementation of land reforms has happened. That is another concern. Green revolution was implemented. Right? Green revolution was implemented. But the benefit of green revolution was concentrated more in the northern states, and very less benefit was derived by the farmers in the southern states. And the reason is there, right? Some of you will simply say, why did that happen? For green revolution to benefit, or for green revolution to become successful, you need continuous irrigation facility. Now, please think of it, geography class, please think of it. Between northern states and southern states, where do you think there is a better irrigation facility available? Better irrigation facilities available in northern states because of right, the continuous river flow, or let's say perennial rivers that will flow in the northern states. And that is a precise reason green revolution provided more benefit in the northern states compared to southern states. Right, higher population growth rate. From the 4th 5-year plan, we started implementing family planning programs. But even then, India today is one of the most populous country in the world. One of the most populous country in the world. And some of you might be thinking, what is the problem with the population? Please think very carefully. What is the problem with the population? If the population increases, don't you think there will be higher demand for food grain production? Yes or no? If the population increases, there is going to be a higher demand for the food grain production. And considering what is happening in the climate change, don't you think there is already a lot of concern regarding what is going to be the impact of climate change on the agriculture sector production? Even if the climate, that is, let's say, overall average temperature increases by 1 degree Celsius, we are expecting a huge drop in the agriculture sector production. So on one side, population is increasing, which means a demand for agriculture food grains will start increasing. Second, if population keeps on increasing, sufficient number of jobs are not available, more and more population will remain unemployed. If population remains unemployed, don't you think the pressure on government of India to provide social welfare will also be very high? I hope you understand. But third, if population keeps on growing at a very faster pace, unemployment remains higher, population becomes old. Can you imagine what kind of healthcare facility pressure will be there, or pressure on in healthcare facilities, healthcare infrastructure in the future? So there is a lot of concern regarding the rising population in case of India, right? So higher population growth rate, we have been able to control population in some of the states, but in some of the states there has been a very high growth rate in the population. Okay, GDP contribution is uneven. Some of the sectors, for example, agriculture sector accounts for around 48 to 49% of working population in India. Look at this. Agriculture sector accounts for around 48 to 49% of working population. But on the other side, contribution is 17%. Contribution is 18%, which means though you are accounting for huge amount of working population, income generation is very, very low. Right? Don't you think that's a problem? That's a concern for Indian economy. Yes. Employment growth rate is also slower, right? Unemployment growth rate is actually increasing in recent times, right? So these are some of the issues related to the 60 plus years experience of 5-year planning in India. So overall, what you should conclude? What should be your overall conclusion? You will have to say that because of planning, because of policies under the 5-year plans, we have been able to achieve in certain sectors such as agriculture. But having said so, inclusive growth we are yet to achieve, right? The population control has not happened, right? GDP contribution is uneven. Even today, some of the states, GDP is very, very low. We need to address these particular concerns over a period of time. That should be your evaluation. That should be a verdict regarding the 5-year planning in India. Done? Any doubts? Any concern? Let me know. Otherwise, I'll go forward. Any concern regarding the evaluation part of 5-year planning? Any concern? Okay, no concern. Let me go forward. Niti Aayog. Right, so starting 2015, Government of India set up a new authority by the name of Niti Aayog. Now, before you start asking me, sir, what is the long form of Niti Aayog? Niti Aayog simply stands for National Institute for Transforming India. Niti Aayog stands for National Institute for Transforming India, NITI. We established Niti Aayog starting 2015, point number one. Second point, it is an authority which has been set up through executive authority of Government of India. Through executive order of Government of India. It is not a constitutional body. It is not even a statutory body as well. There is no law. There is no act for Niti Aayog. It is simply an authority which has been set up through the order of Government of India. Tomorrow, if Government of India wants to abolish, they can simply abolish it. Now, what is the composition of Niti Aayog? There are two very important parts in the Niti Aayog. There are two important pillars in the Niti Aayog. One is a full-time organization, FTO, full-time organization. In the full-time organization, there is a chairperson, Prime Minister is the chairperson. In addition to the chairperson, we have a vice chairperson. We have a CEO of Niti Aayog, Chief Executive Officer of Niti Aayog. We also have right various experts who are appointed by the government in the Niti Aayog full-time organization. For example, have you heard of Mr. Ramesh Chand? Ramesh Chand is a member of Niti Aayog. Mr. Arvind Panigeria was a member of Niti Aayog, was a member, today is not a member. So a lot of these experts are appointed by the government as members of Niti Aayog. Right? That is full-time organization. Apart from the full-time organization, there is also a governing council. Apart from full-time organization, there is also a governing council. In the governing council, the chairperson, the head of the governing council is the prime minister. But apart from the prime minister, there is a representation. There is a representation of all the chief ministers as well as the lieutenant governors of union territories. So remember this. In the governing council, you have representation of the states. Now please look at it and now tell me. Have a look at it and tell me, is there a difference between Planning Commission and Niti Aayog? Based on only this. Based on only this, please do let me know, is there a difference between Planning Commission and a Niti Aayog? Your answer should be yes. Right? None of you are replying. Only two people, right, or three people represent, right? Right, give me the answer. Yes, there is a difference between a Planning Commission, Niti Aayog. How? In Planning Commission, there was no representation of the state governments. There was no representation of the state governments. Whereas in case of Niti Aayog, you are having representation of the state governments in the governing council. That's a very, very important difference. Planning Commission, no state representation. Niti Aayog, there is a state representation. Please remember the difference. I'll give you more differences in some time. Now, what is the role of Niti Aayog? What are the objectives of Niti Aayog? I've given you, right, the statement as given in the Niti Aayog website. Do not by heart. It's very difficult to remember. Technical statements, very difficult to remember. Rather than this, I will summarize them. Point by point, I'll summarize them. You please listen to me very carefully. Point number one. Government of India will ask Niti Aayog to study on a subject and give recommendations. Niti Aayog is supposed to give recommendation to Government of India. Any problem with this? Government of India will ask Niti Aayog to study and give recommendation on a particular subject. Niti Aayog will do that. In fact, that is being done now. For example, National Food Security Act. Do you remember this? National Food Security Act has a coverage of 67% of 2011 population. 2011 population. Don't you think whatever coverage we have, we are looking at an outdated data for having coverage under NFSA. So don't you think Government of India should revise the coverage under NFSA? Of course, yes. So Government of India has already asked Niti Aayog to look into the issue of coverage under NFSA. So point number one, please remember this. Government of India will allocate a subject to Niti Aayog. It will give advice, recommendation to Government of India. Point number two, Niti Aayog itself will take up some of the areas, some of the interested subjects. They will study because these are very important for national security, for growth in the economy, for strategic purposes, etc. These areas are very important. So whether government is telling Niti Aayog or not doesn't matter. Niti Aayog itself will take it up, give recommendations to Government of India on areas of national security, strategic importance, etc. Third one, Niti Aayog also plays a very important role in promotion of cooperative federalism in India. Cooperative federalism. What is this cooperative federalism? Cooperative federalism simply means both the center and the states are coming together. I repeat, both the center and states are coming together in order to implement a particular program or an initiative. For example, please do let me know whether this makes sense or not. Can I say GST Council is an example of cooperative federalism? Correct? GST Council is a prime example of cooperative federalism. What about Niti Aayog, where the central government as well as state governments are present? Don't you think governing council of Niti Aayog is also an example of cooperative federalism? Right. So third very important point, to promote cooperative federalism. Fourth very important point, earlier planning commission used to prepare a plan for whole of India, one plan for whole of India, and implement the plan. Can I call this as top to bottom approach in planning? I'll repeat it again. Earlier, planning commission used to prepare one 5-year plan for whole of India, and we used to implement. That is, the state governments used to implement it. Can I call this as top to bottom approach of planning? Niti Aayog says, I will not follow this. Right? Niti Aayog says, no, I will not do that. What Niti Aayog says, if I want a particular scheme to be implemented, if I want a program to be implemented, first I will implement it at a village level. I will implement it at a village level. Now, once this particular plan is implemented at the village level, I will study if there are any problems with the plan, any problem with the program, etc. I will address it. Then I will implement it at a district level. Then I will implement it at the state level. Then I will implement it at all India level. Can I call this a second type as a bottom to top level planning? All of you okay with this? Right? I'll repeat it again. Niti Aayog says, any plan that I want to implement, any program, etc., etc., first we will target a village. We will implement it. Then we will implement it at a district level. Then at the state level. Then at all India level. This is a bottom to top level planning. So planning commission, top to bottom. Niti Aayog, bottom up. Right? Bottom to top level planning. Right? That is the fourth very important objective. Fifth very important objective, to pay special attention to certain sections of the society who have been left out of, who are not getting adequate benefit of economic progress that is achieved by Indian economy. I hope you understand this. There are certain sections in the society who are not getting the benefit. Rest of India is growing. This section of the society is being left behind. So Niti Aayog says, I will make certain policies for this section of the society in order to ensure that even this society will start enjoying these benefits. Right? That is basically one more objective of Niti Aayog. Done. To design a strategic and long-term policy, program framework, and initiatives and monitor their progress and efficacy. For example, how many of you have heard of sustainable development goals? Let me know. Again, not related to economics, but in ecology, environment, etc., you'll come across this. Initially, we had Millennium Development Goals. 8 goals were covered under MDM. Later, it was expanded till 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. 17 goals are there. 17. Further, they have been broken down into more than 160 units. Whatever it is, don't worry. Who is the authority which is monitoring the implementation of sustainable development goals in India? It is Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog is the authority which is monitoring the progress of sustainable development goals. So Niti Aayog will formulate plans, tell government of India, tell the state government how to implement these particular programs, long-term strategies, and will also keep on evaluating all these particular initiatives. Right? That is basically one more initiative of Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. These are the objectives. Okay? Do not by heart them. Please do not by heart them. Don't waste your time. Do not by heart them. Point number 1, cooperative federalism. Point number 2, right? Any subject of importance allocated to Niti Aayog by the government, Niti Aayog will give recommendations. Point number 3, it will only take up certain subjects of strategic importance, national security, and give advice to government of India. Point number 4, it will create credible plans at the village level, then right, basically implement it at a higher level following bottom up approach. Point number 5, certain sections of the society are not enjoying the benefits of the growth in the economy. The policies would be created in order to provide benefit to them as well. At point number 6, certain policies will be right prepared, long-term strategies will be prepared, and evaluation of these strategies, implementation evaluation will be followed by Niti Aayog. Right? Just generalize this like this, it will be easier for you to remember. Okay. Now, what is the difference between Niti Aayog and Planning Commission? What are the important differences? Point number 1, Planning Commission followed a top to bottom approach of planning. Niti Aayog follows bottom up approach. Planning Commission did not have a representation of the states. Niti Aayog has a representation of the states. Planning Commission decided growth targets not only for overall Indian economy, for agriculture sector, for industries, etc. Niti Aayog does not give any target for anybody. I hope you understand. Niti Aayog does not give any target. Niti Aayog does not decide India should grow at this pace. Niti Aayog does not decide agriculture should grow at this pace. They might give recommendation, but it is now government of India which will decide what should be the target growth rate for India, agriculture, industries, etc., etc. Planning Commission had powers to allocate finances to the state governments. Please remember this. Planning Commission had financial powers for implementation of 5-year plans. Allocation of funds was done by the Planning Commission. Niti Aayog does not do that. Niti Aayog does not handle finances. Simple. Niti Aayog does not handle any kind of finances. Okay, there is no financial power for Niti Aayog. Right? So, advisory body with financial power, Niti Aayog is basically an advisory body. And please remember this, advisory body by nature means any advice, any recommendation given by Niti Aayog is not binding on Government of India. Government of India may accept the recommendation or might simply reject the recommendation. It is right. It is not at all binding on the government. In fact, right. In fact, please understand this. Instead of advisory body, there is one more term that they use. They will say that Niti Aayog is a think tank. What do you mean by a think tank? It is an authority, it is an institution which will study and give recommendations to government. Very simple. What do you mean by think tank? It is an authority, it is an institution which will study certain subjects, study certain important areas, and give recommendation, give advice to Government of India. That's it. That is the meaning of the term think tank. That is essentially the difference or the comparison between the Planning Commission as well as Niti Aayog. In fact, this question was asked by UPSC once. Compare the principles or distinguish the principles followed by Niti Aayog and the Planning Commission. 150 word question. This was asked by UPSC. Okay. Now, what is the importance of Niti Aayog? What is the importance? Right? How important has been Niti Aayog? Right? Many of you are asking. In that case, if Niti Aayog is just a think tank, how effective do you think is Niti Aayog? I'm coming to that. How effective has been Niti Aayog and what are the issues regarding Niti Aayog? That is what I'll explain now. Niti Aayog, please understand, has become a very important participant which is connecting the industries with the central government, which is also acting as a mediator between the central government as well as the state government. Meaning what? Niti Aayog is a place where both the central government and the state governments, both of them are coming together and they are conducting deliberations, they are conducting discussions. So don't you think Niti Aayog is becoming like a forum for deliberations between the central government and state government? Yes. Second, Niti Aayog also publishes lot of indices. I repeat, Niti Aayog also publishes lot of indices. For example, you must have heard of Export Preparedness Index. If you have not heard of this, please come when you come across this, read Export Preparedness Index (EPI). Export Preparedness Index (EPI). Now, what is the role of Export Preparedness Index? There's a term called as competitive federalism. There is a term called as competitive federalism. You have come across cooperative federalism. Now there is one more term, competitive federalism. What do you mean by competitive federalism? Competitive federalism basically means there is a promotion of competition between units of right the country. What are the units of the country? States. Federal units of the country are nothing but states. So there is a promotion of competition between the state governments. That is called as right competitive federalism. How? How Niti Aayog will promote competition in the states? Let me give a very simple example. Niti Aayog publishes one index, one report, which is called as Export Preparedness Index. Based on various parameters, they will give ranks to the states as to which state is best placed for promotion of exports. Now imagine you are a manufacturer. Okay, you are a foreign investor who wants to invest in India, wants to invest, manufacture, sell in the domestic market, also export it to international market. So don't you think in these kind of situations, the states which are ranked very high, I'll repeat the statement. The states which are ranked very, very high in the export preparedness index, they will attract a lot of investments. Let me know. I'll repeat it again. Right? The investors want to invest so that they want to manufacture, sell in domestic market as well as export. Now, in the index are states such as Maharashtra, Gujarat, these states are ranked at the top. They are ranked at the top. Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and I'm pretty sure you will understand why. If these states already are ranked at the top, which means the export infrastructure is already present in the states, the labor is already available in the state, it is very easy to get licenses or get approvals from the government there. Land acquisition also very easy. The state government also has policies to promote export because these are generally the parameters which are considered for ranking. Now, if a state is ranked very high in the top 5, don't you think it will help the state in order to attract a lot of investments? Of course, answer is yes. So by providing these kind of rankings under the indices, there is a competition which is promoted between the states. That is also the importance of Niti Aayog. So point number 1, we'll hold consultations with the industries, we'll take their inputs, we'll prepare a report, give it to Government of India as a recommendation, as an advice. So it is acting like a mediator between industries as well as the government. It is promoting competition between the states. Of course, that is also very, very important. It is acting as a forum for deliberations between the central government as well as the state government. It has already provided a lot of important recommendations, inputs to Government of India. For example, let me give a very simple example. All of you heard of bullet train project? Let me know. All of you heard of bullet train. In fact, in the classroom, we have discussed bullet train project. What is the advantage? What is the concern? In case of bullet train project, before the bullet train project was actually implemented, Niti Aayog had set up a committee. That committee studied whether bullet train project is feasible, how it should be implemented, etc. and gave recommendation to Government of India. So a lot of these recommendations are given by Niti Aayog, right? By setting up committees, they're giving recommendations to Government of India, advice to Government of India. Okay. And finally, in order to monitor the progress of various initiatives of Government of India, right, various programs of Government of India, there is a one, right, department. There is a department in the Niti Aayog, that is Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office. It has introduced the DMEO in order to keep a track of how effectively the policies, the programs of Government of India are being implemented. Evaluation is done by this office, DMEO. Right? So this is the importance of Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. And just to consolidate this particular point as to how important is Niti Aayog, let me give you certain examples. Certain examples. Again, I can give you 50, 60 examples, right? You don't have to remember all of it. Around 5 to 6 are more than sufficient to prove the point that Niti Aayog has played a very important role in a couple of years. What are these recommendations? Point number one. There was a committee which was set up under the membership of, under the chairmanship, not the membership, under the chairmanship of Mr. Bibek Debroy. And this committee studied about restructuring of Indian Railways. It studied about restructuring of Indian Railways. And you're seeing in the last couple of years, lot of changes have been done by Government of India in the Indian Railways itself. Best example for this is Government of India has discontinued, I repeat, Government of India has discontinued concept of separate budget in the railways. Right? So there was a committee which was set up, which was chaired by Mr. Bibek Debroy for this. Second, there was also one more committee which was chaired by Mr. Arvind Panageria. And what was the right importance of this particular panel or committee? It studied high-speed railway connectivity between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, the feasibility of this kind of a project. Right? Again, recommendations have been provided. Third one, it appointed a committee. Niti Aayog appointed a committee which was headed by Mr. Tajamul Haq, right? Very, very famous expert, by the way. I'll tell you certain point here. Very, very important expert in the context of land reforms. Why? There is now a discussion that the states must implement land leasing reforms. What do you mean by land leasing? Understand this very carefully. Imagine you become an IS officer. I wish that all of you become IS officers. Okay. You have certain amount of land, let's say 5 hectares or even 2 hectares. Now, once you become IS officers, is it possible for you to conduct agriculture in this 2 hectare of a land? Of course, no, it is not possible. Now, you will lease it out. Lease it out simply means rent it out to me. Imagine I'm a farmer. You will lease out the land to me. This is called as a land leasing. But the concern in case of India has been that whenever this kind of a land leasing has been done, the land leases are oral in nature. The land leases are oral in nature. There is no written agreement. We orally agree as to what I will cultivate, for how many years the land will be given on lease to me, whether I'm allowed to do this or do that, what kind of infrastructure I'll be allowed to develop in this particular land. Will I be allowed to dig up a well? Will I be allowed to install certain irrigation infrastructure, etc., etc.? There is a oral agreement. There is no written agreement. Now, please think of it. If there is an oral agreement and if there is a dispute between you and me, how can this dispute be resolved? I hope you understand. How can the dispute resolution happen? It cannot happen. So that is the precise reason there was a committee which was set up headed by Mr. Tajamul Haq. And this Tajamul Haq committee recommended that henceforth, whenever the land is given on the lease, let's formalize it by having a written agreement. All of you okay with this statement? Let's formalize this concept of a land leasing by having written agreements. not oral agreements, written agreements. And if there is any kind of a dispute between the owner and the tenant, then there is a written agreement, right? The appropriate authorities, you can go to them and have the dispute resolution done. That is the precise reason why this committee was set up, and this has recommended that we should have a formal written agreement whenever land is given on lease basis. But please understand again, please understand, these kind of reforms, whenever you talk about agriculture sector, these kind of reforms have to be implemented by the state governments. Central government cannot implement such reforms. State governments has to implement reforms, right? That's the reason many of the states have not even discussed the formalization of land leasing agreements as per the recommendation of Tajamul Haq committee. Anyway, next one, promote competitive federalism among the state governments by publishing various indices. It has been asked to recommend the population coverage under National Food Security Act. Should we restructure, revamp, right, the population coverage under NFSA? Next, interministerial committee has been set up, which is monitoring establishment of urea plants in India. There is a proposal to set up urea plants at Ramagundam, Talcher, Gorakhpur, Sindri, and Barauni. So there is an interministerial committee within Niti Aayog which is actively looking at what levels these particular urea plants are being established or how these are being developed. A task force has been set up under the chairmanship of Mr. Ramesh Chand to provide a permanent solution for sugarcane sector. Sugar as well as sugarcane sector. Because a lot of issues, if you're reading newspapers, you'll know about this. A lot of issues are faced by the sugarcane farmers as well as sugar mill owners. So a permanent solution has to be provided, long-term solution has to be provided for both the sugarcane cultivators as well as a sugar right a sector participant. So a committee has been set up. And finally, a committee has been set up which is headed by a former Supreme Court of India Justice, that is Justice A.K. Sikri, a Judge A.K. Sikri, and the committee has been asked to look into online dispute resolution. Can we adopt online dispute resolution so that the justice delivery can be speeded up, the disputes can be right basically resolved much faster, the amount, because the commercial disputes will actually involve certain amount of money. Commercial disputes actually mean basically certain amount is getting stuck up in the justice system. So can we speed up right the dispute resolution through online methods? That is basically online dispute resolution system, right? A committee has been set up which has recommended that yes, we must go for ODR, right? So at least now I hope you understand what is the importance of Niti Aayog. No doubt, Niti Aayog is a think tank, no doubt. Okay, it's basically an advisory body. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have any importance. It has played a lot of advisory role already in regards to a lot of reforms wherein recommendations have been provided by the Aayog to the government of India. But having said so, are there any concerns regarding Niti Aayog? Are there any issues regarding Niti Aayog? One, Niti Aayog is not a constitutional authority, hence is not answerable to parliament. It is an executive authority. It is an authority through executive order of government. It is answerable to government of India. Now think of it. Please think of it. You want Niti Aayog to provide inputs to government of India, advice to government of India. But if that authority can be abolished easily by government of India, don't you think there'll be concerns over autonomous, right? Basically independence of this kind of an authority, right? Because anybody can be appointed, anybody can be removed, no process is there, government will decide everything, etc. So there will be questions, there will be concerns over how autonomous, how independent is this kind of an authority in terms of giving recommendations to government of India. Second, lot of other reforms have been implemented. The Niti Aayog has not played any kind of a role in such kind of reforms. For example, government implemented GST. Any role of Niti Aayog in the GST? Government implemented demonetization. Any role of Niti Aayog in the demonetization? So, in lot of these important reforms that have been implemented by the government, Niti Aayog has not played any kind of a role. Right? So, that is one more concern. Third one, right? It does not influence any kind of investment. Why? Planning Commission had the powers to allocate funds to the states. Niti Aayog does not allocate any kind of funds to the states. It will merely give recommendation to the government. Government has the role to influence investments in the economy. It doesn't influence any kind of investments in the economy. Okay. Finally, one of the objectives of Niti Aayog, was to ensure that certain sections of the society, for example, poor people, for example, certain slum areas in cities, certain villages in states, this kind of a population is not getting any kind of a benefit of growth. So Niti Aayog had one objective, to formulate policies in such a way that even this population which is excluded, which is not enjoying the benefits, will also get, right, the benefits, will also start enjoying the benefits, it will get included. But even today, in case of India, the population which is poor is very, very high. The percentage of population is also higher in case of India. So despite it being more than 7 years of Niti Aayog being set up, even today the population, certain population is getting excluded. It is not enjoying the benefits of growth in the economy. Done? Right? So these are certain criticisms or issues in relation to Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. Any problem? Any problem? If there are no problems, we can take a break now. Explain last point of criticism. In case of India, we set up Niti Aayog. Now have a look at the objective of Niti Aayog. Have a look at the objective. Okay. To pay special attention to sections of our society that may be at a risk of not benefiting adequately from economic progress, which means there is certain section of the society which is not getting the benefit of growth in the economy. So Niti Aayog said, I will focus on this population. I will give recommendation to government to implement policies. But don't you think even today, lot of population can be classified as poor? Even today, right, there are villages which are not getting access to certain services. Certain population is not getting access to certain goods and services, right? Which means Niti Aayog has not been very successful in including all of this population in the growth of Indian economy, or it has failed in ensuring that benefits of growth will reach to all the sections of the economy. Okay. It does not have any important role in important policies. It was set up to give recommendations to government of India, to influence policy making of government of India. Do you think Niti Aayog plays any role in influencing GST policy of government? No. Has it played any role in demonetization policy of the government? Again, no. So there are many reforms which have been implemented, which are very important reforms. Niti Aayog has not played any kind of a role in such reforms. Okay. Do we need to learn all the committee and recommendations of Niti Aayog? I've told you this. Try to remember at least 4 to 5. Because if UPSC will ask you what is the importance of Niti Aayog, you will have to prove that. And basically, Niti Aayog has done this kind of a work. Okay? Done? Can we take a break now? Why not? It has been created via law. Again, it is entirely the decision of Government of India. Government of India would simply say, I want certain flexibility in terms of appointments, in terms of, let's say, right, the appointment of the people, or the whether should I continue with this kind of a body or not. So Government of India would simply say, in that situation, I will go with executive order. Because if I make a constitutional amendment, I would require a lot of issue. I'll have to focus on a lot of areas there, right? That is the reason. How? Done? Okay, so let's take a break then. So time is 4:10. We'll restart at 4:25. We'll restart at 4:25. Take a break. Okay, welcome back. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Am I audible? Please do let me know. Am I audible? Okay, done. So questions are there, right? I'm pretty sure you must have seen questions are there. We'll come back to questions. Don't worry. And we'll solve the questions afterwards. The next chapter, last chapter for you people that I want to discuss will be three important concepts. One is regarding employment. We'll discuss regarding employment. Then we'll discuss concept of inclusive growth, and we will wind up the discussion with IMF, International Monetary Fund. If you remember earlier, we have already discussed the concept of the WTO. Right? We have discussed WTO. We will discuss today even the International Monetary Fund. Now, let me start. Employment. In employment, what we'll be discussing? One, what is this employment and labor force? Let's try and understand. Types of unemployment, measurement. How do we measure employment, unemployment, etc.? Then the concept of employment elasticity and jobless growth, labor issues in India, and finally, what kind of reforms have been implemented by the government, right, to address the issue of unemployment in India. Now, let me start. Point number one. Right, what is this idea of unemployed, employed, labor force, etc., etc.? Please remember, the population is divided into two groups. I repeat, the population in a country is divided into two groups. One is called as a labor force, second one is called as a non-worker. The labor force consists of that population which is willing to work. The population which is willing to work basically is comprised of total labor force. Whereas non-workers are those workers or that part of the population which is not willing to work. I'll give you example, just give me a minute. Which is not willing to work, or children below the age of 14 years, etc. Right? Or even for that matter, the bedridden people, population above the age of 60 years, above 80 years, etc. That is called as a non-working population. The population which is called as the labor force is further divided into two parts. One is right, employed population, and the other one is unemployed population. One is employed and the other one is unemployed. Now, what is the basic difference between employed population and unemployed population? The population which is willing to work gets the work and gets paid for the work. Three very important factors. I repeat, population which is willing to work gets the work and gets paid for the work. It is called as employed population. Population which is willing to work but doesn't get the work, that is called as unemployed population. Any problem here? Please do let me know right now. I'll repeat it again. Populations divided into two groups. One is called as a labor force. Second one is non-workers. Can I give you examples of non-workers? Let's say, again hypothetically, don't take it personally and start criticizing me. Let's say you're a software engineer and you came across one article where the IS topper said, I was not able to handle the work as well as the UPSC preparation. So I will quit, right? I quit my job and I basically studied for UPSC in 1 year, 2 year and got through UPSC. Now what you will do is, right, you will also follow the same footstep. You will quit your job. Hypothetical example, you will quit your job. Now, is it okay if I say you are part of the population, but you are not willing to work? Please think of it. You are part of the population, but you are not willing to work. Can I call you as a non-worker? Any problem? Can I call you as a non-worker? That is one example. Second example is you are working, but you decided to go for a right a higher degree. Right? You will go to USA. You will get a degree in you will get a degree such as, let's say, MBA, or right, you will get a master's in right economics, or you will get right post graduation in let's say medicine, etc., etc. Whatever decision you have taken, if you quit your job and if you pursue your higher studies, can I say you are a non-worker? So children below the age of 14 years, these are considered non-workers because whether they are willing to work or not willing to work doesn't matter. You are not supposed to employ children below the 14 years. If you basically employ children below the age of 14 years, you are promoting child labor. That's a crime. Don't do that. So children below the age of 14 years, pensioners, right? People who will opt for higher graduation after quitting a job, people who will go for UPSC preparation after quitting the job. All of this is basically called as a non-worker population. And on the other side, population which is willing to work, gets the work, gets paid for the work, is called as employed. Population which is willing to work but doesn't get the work, that is called as unemployed population. Any problem here? Any problem? Sir, I'm working but I'm not paid. My dear, what kind of job is it? Can you give me an example? Sir, I'm working but I'm not paid for the work. That is forced labor. That is illegal. You're not supposed to do that. And give me an example. Don't create hypotheticals. Don't create hypotheticals. I'm working, I'm not paid. What kind of job is it? Who will do that? You tell me. And for example, you become an IS officer. Government says, in interview you said you want to serve the people. Hypothetical example, just to make it much more fun, right? Imagine you're working, right? Government says you are an IS officer. In interview you said you want to serve the people, so serve now. I will not give you any salary, right? So is it a job? No, that's not a job. That's a forced labor. So forced labor is illegal. Forced labor is illegal. You cannot hire a person without paying salary. You cannot get the work done. Then you're basically talking about British India. Okay. So I hope you understand the logic here. Population is divided into employed population, unemployed population, and non-workers. So what about unpaid internship? My dear, please understand, internship is a training. Training is different. As an employee, your working is different. A training part is different. You cannot simply say, sir, I was a training, but nobody paid me. There is no guarantee that your training period, you will get payment. There is no guarantee. It is entirely dependent on the person who is accepting the training program from your side. Okay. So population is divided into employed, unemployed, as well as non-workers. Now, whenever you talk about unemployment, traditionally there are four types. In fact, I'll add the fifth type also, don't worry. There are four types traditionally. One is frictional unemployment. Second one is structural unemployment. Third one is seasonal. Fourth one is cyclical. What is the meaning of each of them? Let's try and understand. First, frictional. Let's say you will quit a job on the 1st of January. Just understand this. You will quit a job on the 1st of January, and on the 1st of February you will get another job, and you will join the second job. So between one job to the next job, can I say you were unemployed for a month? Let me know. Between one job to the next job, when you shift from one job to another job, were you unemployed for a month here? This kind of unemployment is called as frictional unemployment. This is called as frictional unemployment. Please read the definition. It is there right in front of your eyes. Workers in between the jobs, seeking the first job or looking for new one. Right? Basically, you're searching for a job. Right? That is a frictional. You have quit one job and you want to join another job. In that particular time period, you are unemployed. That is also frictional unemployment. Second one, structural unemployment. Structural unemployment. Whenever there is an introduction of a technology, right? Have a look at this. Whenever there is an introduction of a technology, certain unemployment will be created. For example, I'll give a very simple example. All of you will agree when I say, with introduction of computers, I repeat, with introduction of computers, certain people, their jobs will become useless now. All of you okay? With introduction of a computer, certain people had skill set. They had certain skills. Their skills became useless. Or else, for that matter, if I introduce an artificial intelligence, certain jobs will become useless, right? Certain people will lose the job. So can I say, whenever there is an introduction of technology, this new technology makes certain jobs useless, certain skills useless. That will create unemployment. It is called as structural unemployment. Anybody has a problem with this? Introduction of a technology makes certain skills useless in the economy. That will result in unemployment. That is called as structural unemployment. Third one, seasonal unemployment. Third one is seasonal unemployment. What is this seasonal unemployment? It will result from the changes in the weather. The best example is India's agriculture sector. Now think of it. Don't you think from one season to another season, certain employment will be created, unemployment will be created. For example, if there is a sowing season, jobs are created. Once the sowing season is over, right, unemployment. Harvesting season, jobs are created. After harvesting season is over, unemployment is created. So is it okay if I say whenever there is a change from one season to another season, unemployment gets created? That is nothing but seasonal unemployment. Anybody has a problem? Seasonal unemployment. Next one, cyclical unemployment. What is cyclical unemployment? A particular country will move from, right, let's say, slow down to recession. Tell me now, a particular country, that is economy, will fall from slow down to recession. Will there be unemployment created or not? Think of it. Will there be unemployment created? From recession, the country will enter into depression. Will the unemployment get created? Of course, yes. So it represents the health of the economy. If the health of the economy deteriorates, there certain unemployment will be created. That is called as cyclical unemployment. Anybody has a problem in any of the four types here? Right? So whenever you shift from one job to another job, frictional. Technology will be introduced. It will make certain skills useless. That is structural. From one season to another season, unemployment gets created. Seasonal. And right, finally, cyclical. Whenever the economy of the country, right, deteriorates, falls into recession, falls into depression, health of the economy deteriorates, that is called as cyclical. In addition to this, in case of India, generally there is one more type of unemployment, that is disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment. Very, very famous. Earlier also in agriculture sector, we have discussed this. Disguised unemployment. What do you mean by disguised unemployment? Instead of two people, you will hire three people. Right? The work which could have been done by two people, now you are hiring three people to do the same amount of work. But despite having more number of workers, productivity does not change. I'll repeat it. Productivity does not change. Productivity never changes. Productivity still remains the same. That is called as a disguised unemployment. And the sector which represents a disguised unemployment in case of India is agriculture sector. I repeat, the sector which represents a disguised unemployment in India, it is agriculture sector. Various experts argue that around 8 to 9% of labor in case of agriculture sector is a disguised. Means what? Even if you reduce the labor in agriculture sector by around 8%, productivity in agriculture sector will not suffer. It will still remain the same. In fact, please do look at it and let me know whether this makes sense or not. One more definition of a disguised unemployment is that marginal productivity remains zero. Marginal productivity in disguised unemployment remains zero. Anybody has a problem with this definition? Marginal productivity in disguised unemployment remains zero. What do you mean by marginal productivity? Instead of two people, you will hire three people. You expect productivity to increase. That is marginal productivity. But despite having three people, right? You will not have any improvement in the marginal productivity. It will still remain same, right? Productivity will remain same. Hence, we say in case of disguised unemployment, marginal productivity will remain zero. Okay, right? So these are the 4 plus 1/5 type of right unemployment. Some of you are asking about moonlighting. Please understand, moonlighting is not unemployment. Right? Some of you are saying, what about moonlighting? Moonlighting is not unemployment. Moonlighting is a situation wherein you are working with one company as a full-time employee. After you are done with work with one company, you will start working for the second company. I hope you understand this. Why this is called as a moonlighting? It is referred as a moonlighting for a very simple reason. For a very simple reason, in case of moonlighting, the traditional work is done from 9 to 6. Traditional office hours is from 9 to 6. So you will work for a company where you're full employed, a full-time employed. You will work from 9 to 6. After 6, you will start working for another company because it is after the sunlight, right? Basically, you're working in the darkness, that is under the moon. It is called as moonlighting. So moonlighting is not a type of unemployment. It is a type of a dual work where you are working for one company as a full-time employee, but after that work is done, you will work for the second company. Many companies in India have allowed moonlighting. I'll give you example. Swiggy. For example, Swiggy said we will allow for moonlighting. And many companies said we will not allow for moonlighting because our contract specifically says you are supposed to work for only me. Right? For example, Wipro company or Infosys company for that matter. So I hope you understand. Moonlighting basically means this. Okay. So these are the different types of unemployment. Okay. Now, how do we measure it? Understand the concept here. I'll give you two important points. Earlier, what used to happen? Earlier, what used to happen? We used to conduct surveys once every 5 years. Earlier, we used to conduct surveys once every 5 years. And the survey basically is referred to as employment unemployment survey. We used to conduct surveys to find out how many are employed, how many are unemployed, etc. That survey was called as employment unemployment survey. EUS, unemployment survey. Okay. Now, what was the problem with this kind of a survey? The last time the survey was conducted for which data is available in the public domain. Listen to me very carefully. The last time when the survey was conducted for which data is available publicly was for the year 2011 and 2012. After that, survey was conducted in 2016 and 2017. After this, we have discontinued employment unemployment survey. Why? Right? Why we have discontinued it? Reason is very simple. Imagine you conducted a survey in 2016 and 2017, and next survey will be conducted in 21 and 22. All of you okay with this? After 16 and 17, next survey will be conducted in 21 and 22. Now imagine you are making a policy in 2019 to promote employment. Please think of it. Are you not making your policy on outdated data here? Let me know. Are you not making your policy? Are you not introducing a program on outdated data? Outdated data means you're making a policy in 2017 for which you collected the data 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And don't you think labor market is so dynamic? From one quarter to next quarter, labor market will keep on changing. From 1 year to next year, labor market keeps on changing. So that is the precise reason. Today we do not follow employment unemployment surveys. No, we have discontinued it. Instead of this, now what we do is we will conduct surveys once every quarter. Quarterly surveys are conducted now. And the name of the survey is basically periodic labor force survey. Periodic labor force survey. Very, very famous. PLFS, periodic labor force survey, PLFS, is conducted for every quarter, and after the financial year is over, for full financial year also, the data is published. So now we have a system wherein for every quarter the data is published, for full financial year data is also published. Don't you think PLFS provides more updated data which will help in better quality data being available for policy making? That is the reason now we are following PLFS. Please remember this. Periodic labor force survey. Next, now whenever such surveys are conducted, you will come across certain ratios. Right? You will come across certain ratios. Now there is a question, how do they do it? My dear, please understand. Whenever surveys are conducted, I can teach you how the survey is conducted. Point number one, it's a survey. Survey means what? You do not conduct a census, right? Because some of the students keep on asking, let me explain it. The reason why I generally don't enter into all of it is, for GS paper, all of this is not required. You must have heard of the term census, and there is a term called a survey. What is the basic difference between a census and survey? Census you conduct by going to every home. Best example, population census. Do you think in population census they will basically conduct surveys, samples they do? Absolutely no. They will go to every house and collect data from every house. On the other side, survey, they use a concept called as sampling, right? What is the meaning of sampling here? Let me give a very simple example. Again, all of this is very technical in nature. I'm slightly entering into statistics now. Imagine there is one, right? Let's say one city. In this city, let's say there are 10 lakh people. Do you think you'll be able to collect data, or is it feasible for you to find out employment and unemployment by going to every house? That's not possible. Then you'll have to go to every city, every village to find out data. That will take years together. That is the reason they have a concept called as sampling. Sampling means out of, let's say, 1 lakh houses, or let's say 5 lakh houses, they will identify certain houses. They will call it as a sample. They will go to each of these identified sample. Let's say out of 10 lakh people, they will collect the data for 1 lakh people. Just a hypothetical example. They will collect the data for 1 lakh people. Now, out of 1 lakh people, how many people are employed, how many people are unemployed? They will simply extrapolate it to represent all the 10 lakh people. This is a concept of survey. And when they will go to these, right, let's say 1 lakh people, how do they collect data? There's a different methodology for that also. There's a concept called as, right, EUS, right? I'm sorry, there's a concept called as whether you are employed for maximum 1 hour in the last 1 week, right? There's a particular name for that. You don't have to worry about it. Whether you're employed for 1 day in the last 1 week, sorry, 1 day in the last 30 days, whether you are employed for right at least 183 days in the last 1 year. So there are different methodologies through which data is collected, and they will use the data to find out, right, whether this population is employed, unemployed, etc. All of that is statistics. You don't worry about all of it. Now, whenever such data is collected, right, whenever such data is collected, okay, sir, what is the names of it? My dear, all of that is not required. For example, there is a term called as CWS, current weekly status, CDS, current daily status, right, etc., etc. All of that you don't require it. Don't panic. Don't worry about all of it. Do me a favor. Please check last 10 years question paper. Show me one question where in GS paper 3 they've asked these kind of questions, where they will say, right, explain the survey methodology under PLFS. Explain the survey methodology under EUS. All of that not required. Now, once you get the data, how the data will be utilized to calculate unemployment rate, right, worker population ratio, etc., etc. These are the 4 ratios. But in fact, if you have been reading the newspapers, you will know that the most important ratio for you will be the second one. All of you okay with this? The most important ratio which government will focus, which every other authority will focus, which most of the experts will focus upon, is the second one, that is unemployment rate. What is this unemployment rate? Unemployment rate simply means out of the total population which is willing to work. I repeat, please remember this. Out of the total population which is willing to work, how much of the population is not getting jobs? That is called as unemployment rate. Anybody has a problem, please do let me know right now. I'll repeat it again. Out of the total population which is willing to work, right, out of population who are searching for jobs, how many get the jobs, how many do not get the jobs? So that population which doesn't get the job out of the total labor force, that is basically called as unemployment rate. That is a better representation of unemployment rate. Why? Please think of it. Please think of it. Let's say out of 100 people, right, let's say there are 40 people, right, 40 children who are right having an age of 5 years. Should you be considering this 40 children if you want to calculate unemployment rate? Please think of it. Let's say there are 100 people, you want to calculate unemployment rate for 100 people, but out of 100 people there are 40 children of age 5 years. Should you be considering that 40 children to calculate unemployment rate? Don't you think that is a misrepresentation of the data? That is the reason unemployment rate. This is what is the data given in the newspaper. Unemployment rate increases to 6%. Unemployment rate falls to, right, let's say 4.9%. What are they focusing upon? They are not talking about total population in India. They are focused upon the population which is willing to work. Out of that, how many are not getting jobs? That is called as unemployment rate. Second one, labor force participation rate. What is labor force participation rate? Out of the total population, out of total population, how much is the population which is employed plus unemployed? Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. What is the labor force participation rate? Out of the total population, how much of the population is employed and unemployed? That is called as a labor force participation rate. And please look at the first formula here. Can I use the first formula to calculate the third as well as fourth formula? Let me see how strong you are in terms of CSAT paper, aptitude test. Can I use the first formula to derive the third formula as well as the fourth formula? Either say yes or no. I'll repeat it again. Can I use the first formula to derive the third formula as well as fourth formula? If you ask me, sir, how is that possible? No, it is not difficult, etc. Labor force is employed population plus unemployed population. Very simple. Employed plus unemployed. Can I take only employed population and keep the remaining factors the same? That will give me worker population ratio. Simple. That will give me worker population ratio. Keep unemployed population and use the remaining same. That will give me proportion unemployed ratio. But generally, if you have read the newspaper, you will know about this now. You will not come across proportion unemployed, but definitely, yes, you will come across unemployment rate. You will come across unemployment ratio or unemployment rate. This is how the data is collected and data is used to calculate unemployment rate, right? Labor force participation rate, worker population ratio, as well as a proportion unemployed. Can we go forward now? Any difficulty? Can we go forward? Okay. Now, the issue of the unemployment in India. Why there is a situation called as a jobless growth in India? Why there is issue of unemployment in India? In fact, please understand, there is one term called as unemployment. Unemployment means what? Basically, you are searching for a job, you don't get a job. Unemployment. In addition to unemployment, there is also a term called as underemployment. Do not be confused between both of them. In addition to unemployment, there is also a term called as underemployment. Various experts argue that India faces unemployment problem as well as underemployment problem. What do you mean by underemployment? you as a worker, you have got a job, you're working in particular position, but the kind of qualification that you have is much higher than the job actually requires. I'll repeat it again. What is underemployment? A person working in a job which requires lower qualification compared to what qualification the person has. Can I give you examples? How many of you seen an engineering graduate working as a clerk in a bank? Let me know. How many of you seen this? An engineering graduate working as a clerk in a bank. An engineering graduate working as a clerk in a government office. That clerical position will require very low educational qualifications. But the person, because of scarcity of jobs, right? There could be scarcity of jobs. Or second, right, the person wants only a government job. Third, the person has engineering graduation, but they don't want to go out of the city. They want to work in their own city. They want to settle in that city. They want to retire in that city itself. That could also be the reason why, despite job opportunities being available outside the city, they will not go outside that particular area or region. They will get a low paying job, right? A job which requires lower qualification, they will opt for it. Have you not come across all of it? That is called as underemployment. So India faces unemployment issue as well as underemployment issue as well. Now, there is a term called as jobless growth phenomenon. There's a term called as jobless growth phenomenon. What do you mean by jobless growth? Jobless growth phenomenon represents a situation in an economy where the economy experiences higher GDP growth rate, but very low, negligible employment growth rate. I'll repeat it again. What do you mean by jobless growth phenomenon? It is a situation in the economy where the country, that is the economy, experiences very good, very high GDP growth rate, but employment growth rate is very negligible, very low. For example, if a country achieves a GDP growth rate of let's say 7% and the employment growth rate is just 0.2%, all of you are okay with the term employment growth rate? Let me know. All of you are okay with the term employment growth rate? What do you mean by employment growth rate? In the last 1 year, how many new jobs have been created? How many people have got the jobs? That is called as employment growth rate. So in the last 1 year, GDP has expanded by 7%, but employment has expanded by only 0.2%. Can I call this as a situation of right jobless growth phenomenon? Yes or no? Can I call this as a jobless growth phenomenon? And in fact, there is an argument that India is experiencing jobless growth phenomenon. There is this argument that India is actually experiencing a jobless growth phenomenon in the last 2 decades. In fact, to prove this, right, I'll give you assignment, last assignment from my side. One assignment that you do is, couple of weeks ago, there was one editorial in Hindu newspaper, GDP and JDP. If you have read about this, very good. Otherwise, read it now. Right, there is one editorial, open editorial in Hindu newspaper, very nice article, GDP and JDP. If you have not read it, read it now. In fact, in case of India, the author says that for every 1% of GDP growth rate back in 1990s, the number of jobs which were generated were more than twice compared to how many jobs are created today. Can I say this is nothing but the situation of jobless growth phenomenon? And there is an argument that India is experiencing a jobless growth phenomenon. How so? Are there any proof or are there any data to prove it? We will have a discussion regarding all of these one by one and also add labor issues in India along with jobless growth phenomenon, then the reforms, but after the break. Let's take a break now. This will be a longer break, right? So if you have any kind of a doubt before I take a break, please do let me know. Any kind of a doubt regarding the subject, please hold it back. We'll finish the subject today, then I'll address your questions. What should be the strategy, etc., etc. We'll take it up after the chapter is over. But before that, anything related to what we are discussing, let me know. Export preparedness index is same as export competitiveness index. I've not come across export competitiveness index. If you're talking about Niti Aayog, I've come across export preparedness index EPI. But anyways, check whether export competitiveness index is also a same index or an index published by someone else. Okay. Revamping means restructuring. Export questions is asked in mains. What do you mean by export questions? Please do let me know. Is moonlighting same as gig work? No, moonlighting means you are employed as a full-time employer. You are there as a full-time employer in one company. You are working as a contractual part-time worker in the second company. Right? Gig work mainly means right, you are not a full-time worker. You are a part-time worker. You do not have any type of full-time work. Okay. Other definition of disguised unemployment. Other definition of disguised unemployment is where the marginal productivity is equal to zero. MP is equal to zero. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Definition of inclusive growth, my dear, I've discussed at least 4 times earlier. But again, after the break, when I take up inclusive growth, definition is there in the PPT. You can have a look at it. Okay, let's take a break now. Let's take a break. We'll restart at 5:25. We'll restart at 5:25 p.m. Please join back at 5:25 p.m. Okay.